Hello my friends and welcome to another sneak peek into Battletech Revised. Now, we are heading towards the finish line with Battletech Revised, I think. I mean, there's still a lot to do, but I think we're going to have a playable version for you guys very soon. But in this video, I wanted to cover something that's really key to how we are revising Battletech. And just really show you guys some of the deep and profound thought that has gone on behind some of the changes. So, I want to talk specifically about two particular mechs, and they are the Blackjack and the Panther. So what do we know about the Blackjack and the Panther? Well, what we know is that the stock version of these mechs is awful, and what most people do is they immediately strip the AC2s out of the Blackjack and put in either AC5s, like an AC5 plus armor, which means you have almost the same DPS, but you're a hell of a lot tougher to kill, and maybe change out some of the energy weapons, or they strip the auto cannons entirely and they put large lasers in. And, you know, depending on what they do, they can get this mech up to 100 damage pretty easily, or at least 50-60 long-range damage, plus the medium lasers and a great deal of additional armor. Basically, the stock version of this mech is like a total punishment. And likewise, for the Panther, the PPC is immediately removed and replaced with 4 medium lasers, which gives it 100 damage with 4 medium lasers, up to 140 damage with lost tech. PPC is only 60 damage as standard. So, you know, they immediately create a mech that has over twice the firepower and still has tonnage left for additional armor. So in both cases, people redesign these mechs to make them twice as good as they are as a stock design. And stock design just feels like a punishment for these mechs. And unfortunately, of course, the Op4, the poor Op4, is forced to play stock. It can't change its mechs, only you can. So, what have we done to change the situation? Well, we haven't changed the loadouts, but what we have done is with the addition of our quirks. What our quirks do is they encourage you to keep the stock design. Now, don't get me wrong, I pretty much can guarantee that you could redesign these mechs to be a little bit better if you take the AC2s out of the Blackjack or you take the PPC out of the Panther. You could make the mechs better just like you did before. But what we are doing is we are effectively making the stock design just that little bit more powerful. In addition to that, of course, we have our new balance around the fact that AC2s are very, very hardpoint inefficient. So we've brought their weight down. But they're not overpowered because, I mean, where are you going to find the hardpoints to boat them? If you stick 4 of them on a Jaeger mech, for example, you're going to have loads of free tonnage and no hardpoints. So what are you going to do with your tonnage? You can't do anything with your tonnage, so it's a waste. But what this has done is it's really buffed light mechs and mechs with tolerable, if not terrible, stock designs. We've actually managed to seriously enhance them by just fixing just a few of the weapons that are particularly hardpoint inefficient. After all, hardpoints are not lore, so we can use hardpoints to balance mechs. If I add more ballistic hardpoints to a mech, I make it more powerful, because the lighter, more hardpoint inefficient weapons are more tonnage efficient. The AC2 is the most damage to tonnage efficient ballistic weapon in the game. Just about, just barely. But it's the most hardpoint inefficient weapon in the game. So you're not about to stick 2 of them on a king crab because you think, hey, they're really efficient. Because you're going to be left with like 40 free tons and no hard points to use it. So, this is how we have brought up light stock mechs and even medium stock mechs, we have thought about how can we improve the stock mech while still giving you the freedom to change it to something that's better, but not so much better that the poor Op 4 is left in the dust. And so this is what we've done. You'll notice that our stock Blackjack is tougher, it has improved damage output, and it's just generally well built. But it's still the same loadout as the stock. We've not thrown the stock loadout away. It's still 4 medium lasers and 2 AC2s, so we've not changed that. All we've done is said, you know, these mechs were designed to actually be good. They weren't designed with being garbage in mind. But in the tabletop, there's aerospace, there's infantry, there's, you know, buildings to demolish from miles away, etc, etc, etc. Some of these mechs were designed with those things in mind, but we're not going to have those things in HBS's Battletech. So we have to acknowledge the reality that the AC2 cannot be an anti-aircraft gun. It just can't be, because we've got no aircraft. So what's the point? So it might as well be something that is actually reasonably effective in its role of anti-tank, anti-mech harassment from long range. And just by tweaking this one weapon and relying on the fact that it's very hardpoint inefficient to prevent you from boating them, this mech has gotten a totally new lease on life. Now, you can pull them out and put large lasers in, and you might still improve the DPS of it, although you will of course have to manage the heat a little bit more. But you won't be creating designs that are so much better than stock that stock is a joke. And we don't want stock to feel like a punishment. Likewise, the same care and attention has been placed into the Panthers. Here we have 2 different Panthers. One is the Star League version. You can still find some Star League versions of various things. And the other is just your standard. So let's look at the standard Panther. So what do most people do with a standard Panther, right? They strip the PPC out, and then they shove in a load of medium lasers. And by doing that, they double, sometimes like 2.5 times, the amount of damage that this mech can do. And they often upgrade the SRM to an SRM 6 because they can. Because by taking the PPC out, they've freed up the tonnage to put in 4 medium lasers and an SRM 6 and still have spare tonnage for a bit more armor or some ammunition. So, what have we done? Well, the PPC has gotten a little bit lighter because it was never worth the price that you paid for it. But in addition to that, it's only gotten a little bit lighter. We're talking fractions of tonnage here. But in addition to that, we have given the Panther a quirk to encourage you to keep the PPC. So now PPCs do 10 additional damage and generate 5 additional heat. The funny part is, in the lore, the Panther is a mech that's notorious for heating problems. It is meant to be the mech that explodes. Because the SRM ammo goes up when the PPC overheats the thing while it's jumping around. So we just expanded that. Now it does more damage and more heat, but if you can manage that heat effectively, you might have something that is just as good as that. Well, it won't be just as good as that 4 medium laser SRM 6 design that everybody uses, but it's not going to be a punishment to play with a PPC in this mech. And so, you know, once again, we're helping the Op 4. The Op 4 can only play stock. So, here we have a mech that is much better in its stock variant, in its stock configuration. Can you improve it? Of course you can. It's still probably of benefit to take the PPC out, put medium lasers in its place, upgrade to an SRM 6 or whatever, add more armor, blah blah blah. You know, there's still benefit to doing that, but the benefit is not as extreme as it was. And if you like the PPC, if you're having a long range lance, if you're trying to keep your distance from people and maybe put together a harassment sniper lance, well, now you can do that without feeling like you're giving up half of your DPS and some of your armor to do so. Now, part of the reason why it's taken so long to do Battletech Revised is that we are putting this same care and attention to detail into every single mech in the entire game. So, we have, at the last count, about 440-ish mech variants in the game, and they are all being handcrafted to this level of detail, as in, what is the meta design? Okay, what is the stock design? How can we improve the stock design in a lore way without improving the meta design? How can we close the gap between stock and meta, which more than anything benefits the Op 4, which gives you better gameplay, which gives you more challenge. And you're not going to go into a mission against a load of stock mechs that are total garbage and roll over them like they weren't even there. Now you're going to actually have to worry about them a little bit. And these are our goals with Battletech Revised. We're revising with a full understanding of the meta of this now long been out game, with a full understanding of that we're not going to, we can't have aerospace or infantry in this universe in which this game is built. So we have to account for that. But also appreciating that, the stock designs should be quite cool, should be quite good. They shouldn't just be like, all the stock designs are garbage and now you have to go into the mech lab and fix them. Hell, I hope that some of you will feel like, actually, I can play stock and it won't be a punishment. Or, I can keep a stock design, it's actually not that bad. I'll save my credits for doing something else and I'll refit later, or if I really have a really nice weapon that I want to get on something, then I'll change my equipment around and all that kind of thing. But you no longer be in the point that as soon as you get a mech, you have to refit it, because otherwise you're losing half of its performance. And of course the Op 4 is always in the position of having to use those mechs that you would instantly change, because you have to improve their performance, because you're only going to get half their capability until you go in the lab and change them. So anyway, I hope this gives you guys some real insight into what we're doing with Battletech Revised, which just really makes it different to other mod packs, and that we are really looking at the gameplay balance. This is our key thing, the gameplay balance. But we don't have to compromise on stock designs to look at that balance. We feel like we can just change the stock design enough so that you can actually use it and not feel like it's totally worthless. We'll notice that some of our smaller mechs have got an integrated small cockpits, which so some of these mechs in the lore have got cramped cockpit and small cockpit quirks together, or quirks, it's the right word. So we've designed the fixed cockpit for these small light mechs that have this feature, which you can't change. You can't change the cockpit. The cockpit is fixed. No resolved cockpit for you. But you get a little bit of extra tonnage for it. I think in the tabletop the small cockpit is worth one less ton. So cockpits weigh, most people haven't played tabletop don't know this, but cockpits actually weigh 3 tons, and that is represented in Mech Engineer, but not in HBS's design. Cockpits weigh 3 tons, and in the tabletop there is a quirk small cockpit that reduces the weight of a cockpit by 1 ton. And there are a few mechs out there, especially light mechs, that have both small cockpit and cramped cockpit, which has like a morale accuracy penalty or a piloting roll penalty. I can't remember. It doesn't fit into the game. So we've given these light mechs the integrated cockpit, which is effectively those two lore quirks smooshed together to sort of create the same idea in the lore that, in this mech, the cockpit, because it's a small mech, tiny mech, the cockpit has been crushed down The pilot is jammed in there like a sardine. So you can't have any special perks. No resolve, no injury resist, none of that stuff, because the cockpit is garbage. But you do get the benefit of that there's a lot less of the cockpit. And this is how we're trying to bring some life to some of the lighter, smaller mechs. Because, you know, an extra 1.5 tons is a big deal for something like the Wasp. And you might be able to get just that little bit more out of it. Especially with a pulse laser in it. Okay, that's it for now. That's it for this sneak peek. I hope you guys like how this is shaping up. We'll continue to put our care, thought and attention into these designs so that we can deliver you the best possible combat experience. And I'll see you guys next time.